There's this strange comfort in routines, until the day one small disruption changes everything. That day for me was the knock on my door. It was late afternoon, sunlight spilling through my half-closed blinds in slanted gold lines across the floor. I had just made a cup of coffee, the kind I always pretended I liked black, even though I added a spoon of vanilla creamer when no one was looking. The silence in the room was familiar. It had been that way for months now. Just me, my screen, and my thoughts, until that knock. 3 taps. Not hurried, just ... casual, like a neighbor asking to borrow sugar. Or, in this case, the Wi-Fi password again. I knew it was him before I opened the door. Jason, my next-door neighbor, for about 6 months now. He moved in around winter, but I remember the exact day because I saw him from my window struggling to carry a dresser up the stairs on his own. I didn't offer to help, not because I didn't want to. I just didn't trust my face not to give something away. Jason had this effortless magnetic energy about him. He wasn't overly talkative or loud, but he had this way of being present, like he took up space in a room without demanding it. Always in a soft hoodie and joggers, always a faint scent of cedar and soap when he passed by, and I always noticed more than I should have. We weren't friends, not exactly, but there was a familiarity there, a string of casual hellos, shared elevator rides, and occasional small talk on grocery runs. I'd helped him set up his smart TV once. He'd returned the favor by offering me leftover pizza the night my dinner burned. Little things, nothing big, nothing real, but enough that I remembered them all. I opened the door, and there he was, hoodie again, sleeves pushed up, holding his phone like it had betrayed him. "Hey man, you got a sec?" he asked, scratching the back of his neck. Mind being a pain again. "Mind if I hop on yours for a bit? I just gotta upload some stuff real quick." I smiled like it was no big deal, because it wasn't. "Yeah, sure, come in, I'll type it in for you." He stepped in without hesitation, like he'd done it a dozen times before. He hadn't. Not once. And yet, it felt weirdly natural, like my room had always had space for him, and we were just now realizing it. He dropped onto the edge of my bed, like it was a couch. Legs spread comfortably, phone resting on his knee. I sat at my desk, typing in the password. He glanced around my room, like he was seeing it for the first time, even though we both knew that wasn't true. "Smells good in here," he said casually, nodding toward my mug. "Vanilla." I froze for a second, then laughed lightly. "Busted. Don't tell anyone." Jason smiled, the real kind, where one corner of his mouth pulls higher than the other. "Your secret's safe." He looked down at his phone, scrolling. I looked at him, really looked. The way his hair curled a little at the ends from the gym, the small scar above his right eyebrow, the way he tapped his thumb rhythmically when he was focused. All these tiny things I'd cataloged over months without even trying. I didn't know why it hit different this time. Maybe because he was sitting on my bed, not across the hallway. Maybe because his presence filled the quiet in a way that didn't feel intrusive. Or maybe I was just tired of pretending that his visits didn't mean anything more to me than they were supposed to. I sipped my coffee, letting the silence stretch. Then I asked, casually, or at least I tried to sound casual, "You always come over for the Wi-Fi. Ever think of coming over for something new?" He looked up. His eyes met mine, steady, unreadable, and for the first time, there was a pause between us that didn't feel like small talk. It felt like something was shifting, cracking open, even if neither of us knew what that meant yet. And that's when everything started to change. Jason didn't answer my question right away. He just tilted his head slightly, like he was trying to figure out if I was joking, something new. I had said it half as a dare, half as a deflection, but it hung in the air like an open window. In winter he gave a soft huff of a laugh and shook his head. "You always this cryptic, or is it the caffeine talking?" "Could be both," I replied, trying not to let my voice crack under my own nerves. "Could be. Me just asking if you ever hang out without needing a signal. He looked up at me again, really looked like he was still trying to decode something in my tone. Then, just like that, he smiled and said, "Okay, then, I'm here. What do we do now, besides hack into your creamer stash?" And that was how our actual friendship began, not with a big moment, but with something soft and stupidly ordinary. A coffee, a couch, and a shared playlist of guilty pleasure songs we both pretended to hate, but didn't skip. That evening bled into another, and another. Soon, Jason wasn't just my neighbor, he was around. We started doing these little things together. Grocery runs that turned into snack hauls. Laundry days where he'd fold one of my shirts wrong on purpose just to watch me fix it. Dumb TV shows that we mocked but never missed. There was a rhythm to it. We were two people orbiting each other, pretending it was gravity and not intent. He'd knock on my door with a bag of chips and say, "It's your turn to pick the trash TV," and I'd groan like I hated it, but I never said no. Jason had a way of making even silence feel full. Sometimes, I'd catch myself watching him when he wasn't looking, how he absent-mindedly tapped the remote against his leg, or how he stretched his arms behind his head, t-shirt lifting just enough to reveal a line of skin. And sometimes, I swear, I caught him watching me too, but I never called it out. I couldn't risk ruining whatever this was. He told me once, in a rare moment of openness, "You're easier to be around than most people." I had shrugged. "That's because I don't make you talk about your feelings every 5 minutes. He smirked. "Exactly. And yet somehow I still end up doing it." That's how I learned about his sister, in Arizona, the one who stopped calling after their dad passed, about his job tech support for a company he didn't really care about, but it paid the bills, about how he wanted to learn how to cook, but hated chopping onions. I memorized it all like a map, and then came the night that threw a wrench in the rhythm. It was a Friday, and he'd come over for our usual movie night. Except my Wi-Fi, the very thing that brought him to my door in the first place, was acting up. The signal dropped midstream, and Jason threw his head back on the couch with an exaggerated groan. "Guess the universe is punishing me for mooching off your signal, you know?" I said, standing to check the router. "If you moved your desk away from that corner in your apartment, you might actually get decent range." He looked over at me. "Yeah, wanna come rearrange it for me?" There was a beat, a half-dare, in his voice. "Sure," I said, too quickly. "Why not?" He blinked. "You serious?" I nodded. "Lead the way." It was a small moment, but somehow, stepping into his apartment for the first time felt bigger than it should have, like I had crossed some invisible line. His space was almost identical to mine, same layout, but the differences were sharp. His walls were bare, save for one framed photo of his mom and sister. His kitchen was cleaner than I expected. The air smelled like his cologne, woodsy, a little citrus. We moved a few things around. I pretended not to notice how close he stood when we were adjusting the desk, but the back of his hand brushed mine once, and neither of us said anything. Later, we sat on his couch, not quite touching, and finished the movie on his laptop, and somewhere between the second act and the credits. His knee bumped mine and didn't move away. I froze for half a second, heart thudding like it was too loud in my chest. He didn't react, or maybe he did, but he was better at hiding it. His eyes stayed on the screen, but I saw the corner of his mouth twitch, like he was aware, like he'd done it on purpose. That moment lived rent-free in my mind for the next few days. So did the way he lingered when saying goodbye, hand resting on the door frame just a second longer than needed. So did the quiet way he said, "I liked having you over. You should come by more." It was nothing, and it was everything. That was the thing about us. All our closeness lived in the spaces between, in glances held a second too long, in jokes that carried more meaning than they should, in the quiet pauses that neither of us filled. And maybe I was imagining it all. Maybe I was reading too much into every touch, every look. But something told me Jason wasn't just here for the Wi-Fi anymore. Something was shifting, slowly, carefully, and I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I knew I didn't want to look away. The shift began with something as stupid as a blown fuse. It was early evening when it happened, the sun not quite down, the sky fading to that dusty blue where everything looks soft and in between. I'd just stepped out of the shower, towel slung around my neck, when the power in my entire apartment cut off with a loud click and a heartbeat of silence. No fan, no fridge hum, no light. I stood still, dripping slightly onto the floor, blinking at the sudden quiet like the walls might give me answers. My phone was already dead. I'd been meaning to charge it. Then another knock at the door. Jason. He was holding his phone and wearing that loose, worn gray t-shirt. I'd seen him in a dozen times before. I knew it clung just slightly to his chest after a workout. I knew it smelled like his fabric softener. I also knew I shouldn't be noticing any of that. You too? He asked, nodding toward the hallway light that was also dead. Yeah, I said, rubbing the towel into my damp hair. Whole floor's out. It's probably that old panel again. He hesitated in the doorway, then shifted his weight. Wanna come hang at my place for a bit? My battery's still decent. I've got candles, snacks, and the last bit of a downloaded movie, if you're into Laura's drama. I almost said no, not because I didn't want to, but because I wanted it too much. Still, I heard myself answer, yeah, all right, let me throw on a shirt. His eyes flicked over me for the briefest second before he looked away. Cool, he said, voice too casual. I'll light a candle. His apartment was dimly lit when I walked in, a few flickering tea lights. On the counter, one taller candle glowing in the center of the coffee table. It smelled faintly of cinnamon and something else I couldn't place. Romantic, I joked, sliding onto the floor cushion beside his couch. He grinned. Only the best for my Wi-Fi provider. We laughed, and something in me relaxed. The room felt safe, and maybe that's why I didn't notice how close we were sitting until halfway through the movie. He'd brought the laptop down between us, its faint light throwing shadows across his face. The movie was something forgettable, a thriller. Maybe, but I wasn't watching it. I was watching the way his arm rested behind me on the couch, fingers inches from my shoulder. I was watching the way his thigh brushed mine every time he shifted. The way his breath moved when he laughed, warm against the side of my neck. And I was watching my own hands, clenched too tightly in my lap. I wanted to lean into him. God, I wanted to let my head fall sideways until it rested against his shoulder. I wanted to test the weight of that moment, see if it could hold. But I did in single quotes T. Instead, I asked, do you ever wonder if people miss moments like this? Jason turned, confused. Like, what do you mean? I shrugged, suddenly regretting saying anything. Like maybe stuff happens, or could happen, and people just talk past it. They joke or change the subject, or pretend it's nothing, and then it's gone. He looked at me for a long second, longer than was comfortable. Then, he said softly, yeah, I think about that. We didn't speak again for a while. The movie kept playing, but neither of us cared. My heart thudded in my ears, drowning out the dialogue. Then, mid-scene, he shifted again, but this time didn't move back. His thigh pressed against mine and stayed there. I could feel the warmth of him. I didn't move. Hey, he said, quietly, almost unsure. I turned my head, and we were suddenly closer than we'd ever been, inches away, both half lit by the glow of a screen. I'm not great at saying things directly, Jason said, voice slow and careful, but sometimes I feel like you see through all my noise. And I don't know if you mean to. My throat went dry. Maybe I do. Maybe I'm just scared to say anything. His eyes searched mine. I didn't know what he was looking for, but I wanted him to find it. Then the power came back. A sudden buzz, a flicker of overhead light, and just like that, the moment collapsed. He blinked away, stood too quickly, rubbing his hands on his jeans. "Cool," he said. "Crisis averted." I sat there, stunned, watching him pace slightly like he had to shake something off. "Jason, I'm gonna go reset my router," he said quickly, already halfway to the wall. I stood too, heart pounding. Did I do something wrong? He stopped, back still turned. "No, it's not you. I didn't think this was going to feel like anything." That stopped me cold. He turned around slowly, his expression open but uncertain. "I mean, it's always been easy with you, but now it's different. Like we crossed some line we can't uncross. And is that a bad thing?" "I don't know," he admitted, "but it scares the hell out of me." We stood in that silence for what felt like a lifetime. I thought about stepping forward, about reaching for him, but I didn't. I'd learned too well how fast moments can disappear, so I just nodded. Even though my chest felt like it was caving in, "I should go," I said. He didn't stop me, but just as I reached the door, I heard his voice again, softer this time, cracked slightly at the edges. "I didn't want you to go." I turned slowly. He was standing there, arms folded, like he was trying to hold himself together. "Then say it," I whispered. "Say you want me to stay." He didn't. Not then. He just looked at me, this long, unreadable look, and something behind. His eyes finally gave way. He stepped forward, close enough to feel his breath, close enough that I had to stop myself from moving toward him, but he didn't touch me. He just looked like he wanted to. "I don't know what this is," he said, "but I don't want to pretend it's nothing." "Neither do I said quietly. Then we just stood there, two guys in a room that suddenly felt too small for all the things we weren't saying. And somewhere in the middle of that silence, I realized this wasn't just tension. This wasn't just me hoping. He felt it too. The only thing left was what we'd do about it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, every breath heavy with what didn't happen and what almost did. The room felt colder than usual, even with the fan off. My blanket was too much, but without it, I felt bare exposed. I kept replaying the moment Jason stepped toward me, the look in his eyes, the way neither of us said what we needed to say. Like two people at the edge of something big, a cliff we both saw, but couldn't jump from. And now, everything felt fragile. The next day passed like fog. I stayed in. No texts from him. No knock on my door. I didn't reach out either. Cowardice, disguised as caution. I told myself he needed space. But really, I was afraid. Afraid that maybe I'd imagined it all. That the closeness was just comfort. That the silence wasn't mutual. That the way his knee touched mine, the way he looked at me in the candlelight, was just me reading too much into it. But I couldn't take it anymore. By nightfall, my thoughts had spun themselves into a web of what-ifs. I paced the apartment 3 times before finally grabbing my hoodie and stepping into the hallway. I didn't knock right away. I just stood there, staring at his door like it might open on its own. It didn't. I raised my hand once, hesitated, then finally knocked, 3 soft taps. Just like his, that first day. Jason answered faster than I expected. He looked surprised, but not annoyed. His eyes scanned me, hoodie, hands in pockets, jaw tight. He stepped aside without a word, letting me in. The apartment was dim again, no candles this time, just the soft glow of his kitchen light. I stood awkwardly near the couch, unsure what to say. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "I didn't think I'd see you tonight," he said, voice neutral. "I wasn't sure I'd come." He nodded, like he understood. Silence stretched between us again, and it was unbearable. "I couldn't stop thinking about yesterday," I said finally. "Yeah," he murmured. "Me too." I shifted my weight. "Did we screw something up?" Jason looked at me, eyes tired but focused. "Depends." Are we still pretending there's nothing here? I blinked. I don't want to pretend. Good, he said softly, because I'm tired of pretending to. Something in me cracked open. You scare me, I admitted. Not you, but this, how I feel around you. It's not something I meant to happen, but it's real, Jason. And I don't know what to do with that. He exhaled through his nose, stepping a little closer. You think I've got it figured out? I've been trying to brush it off for weeks, telling myself I was imagining it. You weren't. I know that now. His voice was low, and something trembled beneath it. Not weakness, but restraint. He looked down, hands flexing, open and shut at his sides. I've liked you for a while, he said, almost like it hurt to say aloud. But I didn't know how to bring it up without wrecking everything. What if you didn't feel the same? What if I ruined what we had? I stepped closer. And what if you didn't? What if this is the best thing that's ever happened to both of us, and we keep burying it under fear? He looked up, and that's when I saw it. The vulnerability he always kept buried beneath sarcasm and smirks. The kind that showed up only when someone meant too much. I reached out slowly, like the moment might vanish if I moved too fast. My hand hovered at the edge of his sleeve, then gently curled around his forearm. He didn't flinch. If anything, he stepped forward, so close now that I could feel the warmth radiating off his chest. His voice, when he spoke again, was barely more than a whisper. Tell me I'm not the only one who's been feeling this. You're not, I said. I see you, Jason, and I've been scared too. But I can't keep pretending it's just friendship. It's not. He looked down at our hands, mine holding him, his trembling slightly. Then he said, I want to try. Try what? This, he said. You, us, whatever this is becoming. I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was both of us. But suddenly, our foreheads were pressed together, our eyes closed, breaths syncing up like we'd finally found the rhythm. We'd been dancing around for months. He was warm, steady, real. I've wanted to do this since the first time I saw you fix my shirt when I folded it wrong, he whispered, a small smile playing on his lips. I laughed, nervous. I've wanted to do this since you said my apartment smelled like vanilla and didn't make fun of me for it. Then, slowly, painfully, beautifully, he leaned in. His lips brushed mine like a question, not a demand. Gentle, hesitant, testing the weight of the moment. And I answered. The kiss was quiet. Not fireworks or explosions, but something deeper, like a note held just long enough to tremble, like relief wrapped in want. It wasn't rushed. We didn't need it to be. We stood there, lips barely parting, fingers brushing jawlines and cheeks, holding on like we'd finally reached the center of something we'd been circling for far too long. When we pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine again. Our hands were linked now, his thumb rubbing small circles into the back of my palm. I don't know what comes next, he murmured. Me neither, I said. But I want to find out. He nodded. Stay tonight. I hesitated, not out of fear, but because the moment felt so big, so delicate, like a breath held between two people who weren't sure they were allowed to exhale yet. I'm not ready for everything, I said honestly, but I don't want to leave, either. You don't have to, he said, tugging gently at my hand. Just be here. So I stayed. We didn't talk much more. We curled up on his couch, limbs tangled, a blanket thrown over us like a soft boundary we both respected. His hand rested on my chest. I could feel the steady beat of his breathing through his back against me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt seen, wanted, safe. Not because he had said all the right things, but because we had finally stopped running from the truth of what was between us, and now, there was nowhere else I wanted to be. The morning after didn't feel like a morning after. It felt quiet, soft, like the world had finally stopped spinning long enough for me to notice how safe I felt with someone else's breath rising and falling beside mine. Jason was still half asleep. His face turned toward me on the couch, hair messy, a faint crease on his cheek from the edge of the pillow. One arm was slung loosely across my chest, like he'd fallen asleep mid-thought and forgot to let go. I stayed still for a while, just watching him. I was used to mornings filled with silence, but this one felt different. Not empty, just full of something unspoken, a quiet promise. Eventually, he stirred, his eyes cracking open slowly. When he saw me looking at him, he blinked a few times, like he was still checking if this was real. "Morning," he said, voice rough and low. "Morning." He looked down at where his hand still rested on me and gave the smallest, sleepiest smile. Guess I got comfy. I didn't mind. We laid there a moment longer, the warmth between us lingering like steam. Then, without moving, he said, "So, are we just gonna pretend that kiss didn't melt my brain last night?" I laughed softly. I was thinking the same thing, but with fewer dramatic metaphors. He nudged me playfully with his shoulder. "Let me have this, man. I've never done this before, the whole waking up next to someone and not panicking about what I said thing. Feels kind of nice, right? Dangerously nice." We both fell into a moment of silence again, but this time it was companionable, no tension humming beneath the surface. His fingers found mine under the blanket, and we just sat there, watching the light change on the ceiling. After a while, he said, "I kept thinking it was gonna be weird, waking up next to you." "And is it?" He turned to me fully, expression soft. "It's not. It's actually the first time I've woken up and felt like something made sense." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Me too." He propped himself up on one elbow, looking at me seriously now. "So, what happens next? Like, are we just gonna keep hanging out and pretending we're not basically dating now?" I smirked. "You want to put a label on it already?" "Well, no," he said quickly, then backtracked. "I mean, maybe. I don't know. I just don't want this to be a one-time thing. I don't want to wake up tomorrow and have it be gone." I sat up a little too, brushing my hair back. "Jason, I don't think I could go back to how things were, even if I tried." His shoulders relaxed, like I'd said the exact thing he needed to hear. "I don't want to rush anything," he added, "but I do want this. You, us, same here." He leaned his head on my shoulder, quieter now. "We might have to keep it slow. I've never done this before, like, with another guy. Not seriously. I get that. I mean, I've thought about it," he admitted. "But you're the first person who's ever made me want to stop thinking and actually try." I wrapped an arm around his back, letting my palm rest between his shoulder blades. "We'll go slow. We'll figure it out." He gave a little sigh of relief against my chest. "You're dangerously good at being calm." "I'm not calm. I'm just hiding my freak out really well." He chuckled, the sound vibrating against me. "Good. Then we're on the same page." There was a lightness between us now, like the weight we'd both been carrying finally slipped off our shoulders. Later, we ended up in the kitchen making scrambled eggs, still in boxers and old t-shirts, stealing bites off each other's plates. Jason bumped me with his hip at the stove, daring me to overcook them just to annoy him. I flipped the eggs perfectly out of spite. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me. "This is weird," he said. "What, breakfast?" "No. Us. This feels like a thing." "It is a thing," I said, handing him a plate. "And it's ours." We ate side by side at the counter, our knees brushing, the morning sun making patterns on the floor. And I realized, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I felt present. We still had questions, still had fears, but those didn't feel like walls anymore, just hills we'd figure out how to climb together. A few days passed, and everything felt different, not in some dramatic, earth-shattering way, but in the small, quiet details that suddenly mattered. Jason didn't knock anymore. He just walked in. He'd come over after work, kick off his shoes, and throw his hoodie onto the same chair like it belonged there now. And maybe it did. I'd catch him stealing glances at me when he thought I wasn't looking. I'd catch myself doing the same. We didn't label it, not yet. But the way his hand would find mine while we were watching something, or the way he'd lean into me when we said goodbye, it all said enough. It was a Saturday when we took our first not-a-date walk. We grabbed coffees from the corner shop and wandered through the park nearby. The late afternoon sun hung low, casting everything in soft gold. Kids screamed at a jungle gym. A guy jogged past us with a golden retriever that looked like it hated cardio. Jason nudged me with his elbow. You ever notice how different the world looks when you're not pretending? I glanced sideways. Pretending how? He took a slow sip of his iced coffee, then shrugged. I don't know. Pretending you're okay. Pretending feelings are just a phase. Pretending to just need a Wi-Fi password. I laughed. Wow, was that your version of romantic? Shut up, he said, smiling. You know what I mean. I did. We stopped at a bench under a tree, one of those spots that felt tucked away from everything. He sat beside me, foot tapping lightly like he was trying to ground himself. I've been thinking, he said, looking down at his drink, about how this started, and how easy it would have been to miss it. Yeah, I said, but we didn't. He nodded slowly, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a slip of paper. What's that? I asked. He handed it to me. It was a scrap of notebook paper, jagged edges, hastily torn. On it was a 10-digit string of numbers and letters. My Wi-Fi password, he said. I stared at it, confused. I changed it, he added, to this. I looked again. The string wasn't random. It was a mix of our initials and the date we met. The day he first knocked. You're such a sap, I said, trying not to smile too much. He bumped my shoulder. Takes one to know one. I folded the paper and slid it into my wallet. You know this means you can't leave me now, right? I've memorized the new network. Jason grinned. That's kind of the idea. We sat there for a long time, not saying much, just watching the light shift through the branches, listening to the city buzz faintly in the distance. His pinky brushed mine again, but this time he didn't pull away. Can I ask you something? He said after a while. Of course. What are we now? I exhaled slowly. I don't know the perfect word, but I know what it feels like. It feels like the beginning of something good. He smiled at that, the kind of smile that reaches the eyes and stays there. Then let's start there, he said. We stood up, walking side by side, fingers finally threading together. It wasn't dramatic. No music played. No crowd cheered. But that moment, that hand in mine felt like the most real thing I'd ever held. We didn't rush anything after that. We took it day by day, coffee by coffee, glance by glance. But every time he smiled at me from across a room or leaned into my shoulder without asking, it built something solid, something worth growing. I used to think love had to be loud to be real, but with Jason, it was a quiet unfolding. A door left unlocked, a key placed gently in my hand, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for someone to love me back. He already did.